Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Without further ado, I would like to proceed with the next agenda, which is the anticipated roundtable session on the topic of the role of compliance and ethics in risk management, moderated by Mr. S.K. Sami, the Deputy Chairman of Ethics and Compliance Board of MMPC. We are also honored to have a line of credible and respected panelists who will be joining us, such as Mr. Mark Odell, the CEO of Life Insurance Association of Malaysia, LIAM, Mr. Nur Azam Muhammad, the Director of Integrity Division, Integrity and Risk Management Department from Inland Revenue Board of Malaysia, IRBM, Mr. Justin Ong Kian Hu, the President of Associate Chartered Financial Analysts of Malaysia, CFA, and Mr. Yusri Yusof, the CEO of Islamic Banking and Finance Institute Malaysia, IPFIM. I will pass the floor to Mr. SK Sami. Please, Mr. SK.
Thank you, Hakim.
Welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to MFPC Virtual Professional Ethics Forum 2020. Today, we are about to discuss the role of compliance and ethics in risk management. Ladies and gentlemen, it becomes necessary to realize that we live in a society with numerous dynamics or urges to survive. Firstly, we try to survive as an individual. We act in the best interest of our own self. Secondly, we try to act in the best interest of our family. We then join and belong to various groups and try to maximize the survival of all the groups that we belong to. Then there is this main issue, mankind issue, the physical universe, the animal kingdom, and ultimately our relationship with God himself. Therefore, we should realize that every action we take must be in alignment with as many dynamics of life as possible. Serving only your interests at the expense of family or your group or your country is not ethical, which will ultimately bring chaos and confusion and further destruction. Ethics has far-reaching consequences, and the whole society must heed its power in bringing about survival. Right now, we just need to understand what ethical behavior is for everyone, their respective field of work and discipline. Now, to do us the honor, we have great panelists, 4 great panelist speakers in our midst. And they are Mr. Mark Odell, CEO of Life Insurance Association of Malaysia, Encik Nur Azam Muhammad, Director Integrity Division, Integrity and Risk Management Department, Inland Revenue Board of Malaysia, Mr. Justin Ong Kian Hu, President of Associate Chartered Financial Analysts of Malaysia, and Mr. Yusri Yusof, Chief Executive Officer, Islamic Banking and Finance Institute, IPFIM. Each of our speaker will speak about their perception on the subject, the role of compliance and ethics in risk management for about 10 minutes. At the end of the presentation, I, as your moderator, will pose some pertinent questions on the subject discussed. And if time permits further, we'll then direct your questions to our esteemed panel of speakers for their response. Now, without any further ado, let me invite our first panelist speaker, Mr. Mark Odell, for his address. Mr. Mark.
Okay, thank you, SK, and thank you for inviting me to join the panel and speak to your members. First, I thought I would just put compliance and ethics in the context of our business, right? Compliance can be defined in our business as making sure that your organization follows all the laws, regulations, standards, and ethical practices that apply to your business, right? And so that's very broad, I think. But if we look at that, I think we can see the direction that we need to take. When it comes to ethics, actually, I had come across 5 codes of ethics, actually, that can sort of describe concisely what it means in our business as well, especially when you look at interactions with clients, right? 1 is integrity, 2 is objectivity, 3 is professional competence, 4 is confidentiality, and the 5th one is professional behavior, right? So I think that sort of sets the context in my mind for how compliance and ethics applies to our business. And when you look at our business, ethics and compliance is extremely important because our business is about trust, right? you know, when you talk about risk management or when you talk about other types of advice that planners provide, it's all taken on trust. And when it comes to risk management, I believe you'd be referring to insurance products, and really there we're selling or providing a contract that makes a promise, right, on certain events. And again, that's based on trust. Also, you have to look at the information and understanding can be asymmetrical. In other words, the planner knows a lot more than the client, right? And so there's a duty to disclose and educate and inform to make sure that the client fully understands, right, what he or she may be buying or entering into. And lastly, I think it goes without saying that ethics and compliance means putting the customer's needs first, right, above all. And I think you alluded to that, right, when you're talking about just the needs of the community and the needs of the individual. Despite the pandemic and its implications, you know, we still have a duty, right, to consider the needs of many different people and organizations, right? So lastly, I'd just like to conclude by just talking about 4 areas I think that influence good compliance and ethics in an organization in the context of our business, right? One is really culture, right? We always talk about tone from the top, but that also means it has to be visible commitment, right, from management and in some cases the boards of directors for good compliance and ethics. And under culture is also leadership by example, right? You know, the cliche is walk the talk. Third, I'd like to just make mention of messaging. Messaging happens in a lot of ways. Some of them are very subtle. They could be pledges, they could be statements, they could be posters in the workplace. They could be many things that actually reinforce the need for a compliant and ethical organization. And fourth, I want to just mention under culture about shared responsibility. I'm reminded of a time when I was running an insurer when there was suspected some misconduct by an employee. And when it came to light, some of my team members say, oh, this person has had this reputation for many years. And so I was taken back, right, that had they failed their duty, right, to actually share and elevate or call out bad behavior. So I think creating the right culture means that there's shared responsibility. Another area in particular is remuneration. I mean, how one is remunerated and recognized really drives the outcome, right, of good compliance and ethics. You look at rewards and recognition, especially in a sales organization, right? Oftentimes, you know, people could be tempted, right, to make shortcuts or to not fully disclose in the effort to make a sale, to make an income, and then that really has to be avoided. And under remuneration is really about alignment and balance. Even on the corporate side, there have been consistent movements, right, by both regulators and entities to balance the you know, the KPIs, if you will, of the organization, to take into account more than just financial metrics, right? To take into account the things that actually will build or sustain a solid foundation for an organization. The third area is on selection and onboarding. I mean, if you want to have a compliant and ethical organization, it really means you need to have compliant and ethical people in your organization. Yeah. And that really starts with selecting and onboarding the personnel that you're bringing in, whether it be an employee or whether it be an advisor, right? Ethics and compliance should feature strongly. You know, background checks, maybe we take it for granted, but you know, we have to avoid the temptation to take in individuals in our organization that may have a questionable background, right? And then it all really starts in the pre-hiring stage, but it really comes to life in the onboarding and the inculcation, right? An organization really needs to impart you know, what they believe in when it comes to ethics and compliance. The last point I just want to mention is around distribution management when it comes to our business, right? We have to remember that everyone, whether it be an advisor or whether it be an employee, they all represent the company they work for, right? Full disclosure of complex products is very important, because if there isn't full disclosure of complex products, it will almost always assuredly come back to haunt the advisor or the company. I also want to point out an area that I've noticed in my years in Asia, right, and that is the responsibility when it comes to insurance for field underwriting. The responsibility for the advisor or the agent, right, to fully disclose a prospective policyholder's situation, condition, medical situation, right, which I think often goes, is taken for granted that, you know, in the quest to get a sale, perhaps I shouldn't tell my company everything I need to know, because if I do, maybe it'll jeopardize the sale, right? I mean, those are situations that really need not occur. And lastly, under distribution management, I think if you can really just be objective, right, and put the needs of your customer or potential customer first, you really don't have to do anything else. I mean, you know what I mean? And I'm reminded of the CLU pledge, right? Which, to paraphrase, is that I, as an advisor, right, in dealing with my clients, after knowing all the facts of their situation, I would recommend to them what I would do if I were them, right? So in my 40 years, I mean, I always carried that, taking that to heart, right? And if you do that day in and day out, I think you'll have a very compliant ethical practice. So in conclusion for my remarks, and speaking to your audience, right, your product is your advice, right? And without, good ethics and compliance, actually, your advice has no value. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mark. And if I may summarize as what you said on ethics and compliance, ethics basically is moral principles that govern a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. And if you go into compliance, it means adhering to a rule such as a policy, standard, specification, or law.
Right.
Right. Thank you so much, Mark. And we will move on to our next speaker, Encik Nur Azam Mohammed. Hakim, you can help out.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, come again,
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Sami. Okay, distinguished panelists, honored guests, and participants, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum and very good morning. Okay, for my presentation this morning, I would like to share more about our best and practice and experience in managing risk with ethics to ensure compliance not only meant to our people, but also meant to the taxpayers as our valuable client. Okay, so in this era of tough economic challenge and increasingly rapid development of technology, as well as digitalization and world economic globalization, so we have been witnessing the emergence of numerous new business models over the last few years. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so these are all our challenge for RIB. So RIB as a tax administrators and practitioners, we must take possible actions of the fact that all of this innovation will affect the way we execute our job function. So in order to maintain and improve our reputation, so we have always been sensitive to these changes, especially with any changing of a government policy and public expectation. And we have tried our best to keep abreast, while at the same time ensuring that our officers are well prepared and trained to carry out their duties. To keep these businesses in our sight, it's important that we also have to change and broaden our perceptions and constantly realign our area of focus. So for internal restriction, always be a human resource factor and financial, besides of getting ready with the latest technology in ICT, as well as competency and ability of our officers to face all these challenges. Okay, next. Okay, we believe that ethical values must be strongly embedded in our corporate culture to influence the behaviors and action of our people. Despite of our vision to become a leading tax administrator that contributes to nation building, we are also focusing on fundamental aspects to increase compliance rates in the country, and not to forget high integrity awareness among the people in LHDN, in IRB. Besides our corporate culture and values, for example, IRB Code of Conduct are based on the principles of fairness and equity, transparency, integrity, and accountability that also incorporate the do's and don'ts that deal with specific ethical issues as a preventive measure. Okay, next. So we go to the managing risk in IRB. So how we manage risk, okay? By having our enterprise risk management, we have designed and developed risk information system known as IRIS to manage all types of risk in IRB. So by appointing risk care officer all over the country as our representative from each branches, states office and departments, all the registered risks will be notified to the respective process owners. Then the outcomes will be communicated through reporting, and decision will be made by the risk management committee, especially on the crucial and critical risks, while other lower risk level will be continuously monitored and reviewed. So we have the corruption risk management, which focusing on the strategic risk, operational risk, and also the financial risk. And for the project risk management, we focus on the system or the ICT risk or the physical project risk. And the tax compliance risk, we look into the registration of the taxpayer, the submission of the income tax return form, reporting the income, and the payment of tax. And for the business continuity management, we are specific on the crisis communication plan, which consists of risk management initiative, emergency response plan, and also the business recovery plan. For the occupational safety, health, and environment, or in short is OSHA. So we do have our own OSHA policy, which the main objective to comply with the OSHA regulations and to reduce the direct costs and to get lower for the indirect costs, and to become more positive on the workplace culture and to improve employee morale due to enhancement of workplace safety and health, and also to improve perception and reputation among the customer as a result of a proactive approach to the safety and health of employees. And the last one is the infection risk management. It's part of the risk category, control and manage under the OSHA. I believe we same like other entities in the country, we are working really hard to manage all the possible risks during the pandemic COVID-19 throughout this year. Okay, next. Okay, we go look into the category of risk. So we have divided our risk into 5 categories, which is the first one is the strategic risk, which is to control and monitor any ineffective strategic decision, insufficient distribution of resources, and unable to keep abreast of changing environment. The second one is the financial risk, sustainability of financial resources, uncertainty of revenue collection, and also the return of investment and fraud. The third one is the operational risk. We are look into categorize the risk into the lack of internal measures, procedures, system, controls, and human resource. The fourth category is the compliance risk, mainly focused on non-compliance in regard to tax matters. And also the second one is the legal actions. The last category is the corruption risk. It's one of the IRB mechanism to manage, monitor, and mitigate any risk concerning integrity, fraud and bribery of our officers, vendor, or stakeholders that might damage to our image and reputation. Okay, next. Okay, specific preventive measure from the corruption risk management. Sorry. Oops. Okay, sorry. Tax compliant risk management model. Okay, IRB have also developed tax compliant risk management plan, which is divided into 4 sectors: behavior, segmentation, risk level, and strategy to overcome this risk. To overcome risk under the tax compliance, so we have progressively come out with our initiative. The first one, to enhance tax education and awareness to the public. Enhance customer service and electronic services. The third one, increase the use of technology in ICT. Optimize information gathering from the domestic and cross-border. The fifth one is active participation in the international platform. And the last one, actively collaboration with third parties. For example, enforcement agencies, GLC, ministry, and also the agency, government agencies. Okay, next. Okay, specific preventive measure from the corruption risk management. So IRB, we have launched the RBM anti-corruption plan, known as PEARL, in November 2019. So this plan is one of the effort on how we combating corruption in IRB. So we are focusing on the 4 priority areas and strategies, with 76 initiatives to be implemented on specific timeline by all the branches, states, and departments all over the country. Some of the initiatives, for example, are transparency in procurement system, transparent in recruitment policy, no political interventions, job rotation, continuous training program, and some more. Okay, next. Next, please. Next slide, please. Okay. So integrity in IRB plays an important element in combating internal and external corruption. We are fostering integrity, strengthening ethics that incorporate past experience and best practice by having our ethics and work guideline. Introduce our IRB core values, which consists of happy, teamwork, professionalism, integrity, and excellence. In our IRB pledge, we also highlighted integrity as one of our elements in the pledge. So in addition, we are also appointing integrity care officer as our champion in every branches, states, and departments to assist us in ensuring dissemination, implementation, and promoting any of these programs, initiative, and information work effectively. Okay, last slide. Next slide, please. Okay. So we are also, sorry. Okay, previous one, yeah. So we are also constantly engineering integrity of our officers to the highest degree through empowerment of whistleblowing policy, no-give policy, anti-corruption committee, integrity pack in any procurement process, and also we are moving forwards in implementation of MS ISO 37001, which is the anti-bribery management system for LHDN. So we are targeting to get this certificate by next year, 2021. So in the hope that taxpayer and public have trust in IRB and comply with rules and regulations, all these measures take place in order due to achieve our corporate strategies with one main objective, that is to preserve IRB image and reputation. So last slide. Okay. So speak with honesty, think with sincerity, and act with integrity. With that, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Nur Azam. I think your ministry together with the collection department of the Inland Revenue Board, Jabatan Hasil Dalam Negeri, is the key component to the country's ever need financial needs of the country. So your department is very important. Simply put, as what you said, corporate compliance, simply put, means having internal policies and procedures designed to prevent and detect violations of applicable law, regulations, rules, and ethical standards by employees, agents, and others. I think it involves legal risk management and internal control. I think from your little presentation here, it's not an easy job because you have to look into the corporate governance of the corporate itself, and at the same time of the users who also have to who also has to abide by ethical standards and procedures. Thank you so much, sir, for your input. And it's my pleasure to introduce the next panelist on the line, Mr. Justin Ong Ken Hu, for your address, sir.
Hi, thanks a lot, Mr. Moderator. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, very clear.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Hope you guys have been having a fruitful conference so far. Maybe can I have my slide up, please? All right. So I think within the 10 minutes, I'm going to talk through with you. I think want to focus on today's topic, right? I think the role on risk and compliance in the whole ethics space, right? So I curated my sharing today to focus on 3 areas: culture, conduct, and ethics. And these 3 are interrelated topics, right? I think that's very important as we're trying to talk about unethical behavior. We have to really think about the culture. I think Mr. Mark, early on has touched on it, right? So I think he mentioned a lot in terms of walk the talk, right? Culture is definitely something that is top-down driven. So culture, conduct, ethics, I think is a one key message. I just want to send it across to everyone, right? As we are looking at the context for today. Next slide, please. And I think in a previous one, I think in Azman has shared a lot, very comprehensively in terms of how organizations like IRB are combating on some of these issues. Maybe I will zoom out the topic a little bit, trying to look at the global landscape, right? So I think these are some of the research that I think Deloitte has conducted in the past, right? So ever since global financial crisis, one thing that we are not short of is really about unethical incidents, right? Misconduct incidents, right? And regulators globally, I think over the times, they have made big businesses here, right? By imposing large fine for some of the misconduct behavior, right? If you look at the counts in terms of dollar and cent, I think as of the latest snapshot in some of the research that we conducted, it has amounted up to 300 billion already, right? 300 billion USD in terms of amount of fine that's going on, that's being imposed to banks and other financial institutions. I think if I could stress on here is that doesn't only happen to, small size of banks and firms. This actually happened to some of the biggest banks, right? So we have heard a lot of incidents in US. I think in some of the American bank, I don't want to mention, right, their name and call their name here, but I think a lot of good point here is that we're trying to learn, right, in terms of how some of these cases unfolded itself, right? So what happened during one of the biggest American bank in that year is that CEO is in a driving seat, right? CEO was very hungry to drive sales and beautify the performance of the company, right? One thing that he has done is really pushing all the way down to the branch manager. So all branch manager, regardless your states and the city that you're operating in United States, you need to show growth every single month. You need to show new customer. You need to show new account opening. You need to show new product that is sold to the customer, right? So, and it triggered down to a lot of behavior changes at the branch level, right? So a lot a lot of incidents will happen would then be, there are people who walk into the branch to buy one single product, for example, a mortgage loan, right? At the same time, because of the relationship manager had the information about the customer, he actually opened up the rest of the account without the consent of the customer, right? So imagine customer A that walk into a branch and, hey, I want personal loan, I want mortgage. But during the process, the customer actually opened a saving account for them, a current account for them, a credit card account for them, etc., right? So, and this got into a very serious stage when I think a few years later, a customer actually found their credit history, right? Obviously, there will be a lot of bills that they did not pay, right? So I think when they get into the credit record in the credit bureau, I think that's when the whole thing unfolded itself. I think that's a one classic example that I just want to remind everyone here. I think a lot of times we are basically blindfolded by aggressive sales target. We do what it takes to meet a certain plan, right? So I think those are the good lessons learned that we can learn about, right? I think, and that is kind of the case that happened in America, right? And if you move on to the European world, I think we are not short of a lot of wholesale trading incident, right? So a big incident that's called LIBOR manipulation, right? Where a few traders come together, they colluded and to manipulate this interbank rate, right? So, and has caused a whole regime change that all the interbank rate will come to an end, right? For the major currency pair by end of 2021. So LIBOR that we hear about, we talk about so much, it will come to an end by the end of next year, right? So I think those are the notable incidents I want to remind everyone in terms of the cases that happened in the past, right? Maybe we can move to the next slide. And when we talk about misconduct can take form across, and it's so pervasive that it can happen across the line of business that we have, right? It can happen in banking when it comes to mis-selling a certain retail product. And the key point here is about vulnerable customer, right? Some regulator has identified vulnerable customer as older people, right? So older people that has a bit of money, but they require some form of financial security. But instead of us selling them a safe product, we're actually pushing them to a high-risk product without them knowing, right? Vulnerable customer can be also defined as students, can be also define that as people with lack of financial awareness, right? So I think a lot of mis-selling has been happening there. The second one is for fee for no service. Just want to call it out because it's very serious incidents in country like Australia, right? So I just want to put a joke out here. I think some of the articles that I read, Australian banks are known to be charging dead people money, right? So fee for no service is then an incident that's coined in Australia, right? So fee for no service, what it technically means is that you did not actually consume any services of the product that you have bought earlier and stuff like that during that year, but you are still being charged for it, right? So think about it as, if you think about it, there could be certain credit facility, there could be certain credit card that you actually stop using it, right? It happened to me myself, right? I used to spend a lot of time in Singapore and live in Singapore. The moment I relocated back to Malaysia, I specifically tell my banks in Singapore to cancel my credit card. But once I checked back again last year, I was actually charged a fee, right, on a card that is never get activated, right? So it's something that is a phenomenon now, right? So I think that is a wake-up call to a lot of financial institutions. Stop charging fee to the customer that did not consume your services, right? The third one is really a road trading, right? That we talk about unauthorized traders actually enter into certain positions without any approval, right? Well, is something that's very relevant to the member of the forum today, right? Provision of poor financial advice, failure to deliver service commitment, right? I'm a president of CFA Society Malaysia. On a full-time job, I'm a consultant with Deloitte. Right, one of the mandate, if I can share with you, is with an insurance company in a region, right? So what happened to the insurance company is that the regulator actually went after the insurance company because of the sales and marketing activity, right? A lot of brochures that the insurance company has published on Facebook through their agency, the WhatsApp sales and marketing material, the presentation materials that actually gone out to the customer are actually not 100% fully represented, right? So I think from a consumer perspective, right, I often receive a lot of insurance plan via my WhatsApp. I got a lot of notification on Facebook. This is an insurance plan that 6% guarantee, 10% guarantee returns and stuff like that, right? So a lot of commitments that in a way insurance company has made through their agency, can be in the form of social media, can be in the form of WhatsApp, can be all sort of marketing channel. I think the key questions that for all insurance agents or financial planner on this call is that, have we done enough due diligence in making sure that we are actually making full representations of the product risk and return? All right. So failure to deliver the commitment of a product, I think, is something that very important here, right? So I think those are the few things that I just want to call out to serve as a reminder for all. Maybe you can move on here. Next slide, please. All right. So I like this quote from the Australian Security and Investment Commissions, right? It takes a long time to build investor trust and confidence. It ties very closely back to Mr. Mark's comment earlier. It's all about trust, right? We are the industry in selling trust, right? The same trust and confidence can be lost very quickly when there is misconduct, and it can take even longer to restore it, right? So it could adversely affect the organization reputations, the customer, and ultimately your bottom line, your profitability and growth will just go down the drain, right? So think about the consequences is actually very pervasive. Next slide, please. So, and in a way that, because the topic for today when I call it is really about culture, conduct, and risk, I just want to put it out into a single landscape. When we talk about culture, the definitions here is the way that it gets done around here, right? So what's a culture? Culture, it means that, I mean, why, and you ask a certain people in the organization, what do you do, what you are doing today? The feedback that you often get is the way that things get done here, right? Risk culture is what you actually do when no one is watching you. Are you doing the right thing when no one's actually watching you, right? So that is really between you and God, right? If you believe in God. The third one is really conduct risk, right? It's really the impact, especially the adverse impact of the actions on the other employee of the organizations, on the clients, on the other stakeholders that you're actually servicing, right? I just want to call it out to make sure that we are clear in terms of some of the definitions. In a layman way, that's how I would define it. Next slide, please. Right. So just want to get down to, there are a lot of words here, but I just want to talk a bit more when we know that we are industry in selling trust, right? And trust is so important to us. And why are they tendency of being misconduct, right? I think 4 of them are relating to the individuals, 2 of them relating to the processes, right? 1 of them actually very relating to the technology, right? Just want to talk about the individual for now. 1 is really about, I think Mr. Mark had highlighted tone from the top. Individual and leadership are not responsible for poor conduct, right? So why is it so important here is that what we have seen in the past is that when an organization was found to have misconduct issue, what happened to the CEO? step down, move on to join another organization, right? So there's a very lack of individual accountability, right, of the individual and leadership. And regulators around the world trying to roll out this thing called senior manager regime is to hold the C-suite personally accountable to certain cases that they're committed to. Second one is really about conflict of interest, right? There will be a lot of things that, I mean, we are in Malaysia, right? It's awarding a company award a contract to the related party of the board, right? A company award a contract to a supplier related to the CEO, right? This sort of conflict interests are not properly managed. So self-interest would always take precedence. I think Mr. Ma had touched on the third point. Recruitment, remunerations, and promotions are not properly done, right? During screening phase, during onboarding phase, during the training phase, right? Bank Negara had rolled out this guideline that's called fit and proper, in making sure that individuals are properly screened, right? If you look at the processes, just want to call out that the more manual processes you have in an organization, there's more prone for the organizations to have conduct risk issue. Because a lot of things, when you think about manual processes could happen, right? Falsify a signature because of manual form. RM can sign on behalf, agent can sign on behalf. So the more tendency you have, I mean, the more manual processes there are more tendency for some of these misconduct, right? The last thing is about the system in monitoring and to do the whole surveillance, right? I still remember when before I left Singapore, I was about to buy an insurance trust fund, right? The whole conversation between myself and risk manager was recorded. I think that was about 4 years ago, right? When Singapore started doing that, right? So during the process, when I were to buy the investment product, the RM will read out all the risk questionnaire, right? Justin, are you aware that you may lose part of all your capital in this product? Then I have to say yes, right? If I say no, then the interview cannot continue, right? Obviously, the RM would then say that, hey, you need to say yes, you need to say yes, and you say yes, right? But I think if you have a strong system in doing some form of monitoring, you will keep the whole value chain and people a bit more honest in executing their duties, right? Just to call out some of the systemic things that we see. Next slide, please. Right, I think this is my last slide here that I just want to remind everyone is that good conduct is important, right? So what do I define good conduct is that it's really about a commitment to deliver suitable and fair outcome to your customer, right? Suitability is very important, and you're trying to provide certain financial advice, a product to your customer. Do your proper suitability test. Don't sell the product that is sellable. Sell the product that is suitable to your client. Fair outcome. Treat all your customers fairly. I think that is the heart of the entire issue when it comes to culture, conduct, and ethics. Right. Back to you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you so much, Justin, for your input. Yeah, about your slide that shows that US 321 billion in fines were paid by the banks, various banks in America, by regulators for misconduct. I believe it's also partly due to the subprime mortgage, which we all have come across many years ago. Fortunately, we are in a right financial environment whereby we are very well regulated by our central bank, both the banks as well as the insurance sector. And also you highlighted on the misconduct of bank where products have been, high-risk products being sold to vulnerable customers. Yeah, it has been a practice. We need to attend to it on both sides, on the bank side as well as on the insurance side. You gave a good input about good culture and conduct, and also highlighted mis-selling of insurance products via digital, whereby the guaranteed amount is been quite skeptical amount being shown, not the right amount, that has gone to mis-selling. And also finally for highlighting the various drivers of misconduct. It was in a short while, it was a very comprehensive presentation, Justin. Thank you so much. And we will now move to our next speaker, my good friend, Mr. Yusri Yusof, CEO of the Islamic Banking and Finance Institute. The floor is yours, sir.
Okay, thank you, SK. Thank you very much. Thank you, MIPC, for inviting IFFIM to join this, this forum. Indeed, it's a pleasure to be here this morning. I think we have listened to a lot of great ideas and great views from three great speakers. So what I'm going to actually share with you is in terms of IFFIM's experience in this, in actually developing a culture. And you see Mark and Justin and even Azam has actually, to some extent, explained the importance of actually developing a culture. Okay, let me go back to about 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago, when the current team came aboard to IFFIM. And the mandate given to us is basically, okay, Yusri, YY, your mandate is to transform IFFIM and to transform IFFIM into a sustainable organizations. So meaning that we should be self-funded and be able to actually move on our own without having to rely too much on organizations. And more the things that we still start going into the process that we have currently at that point of time. And we noticed there's a few red flags. And because of that, we went to the board, and the board said that, look, why don't we actually, we proposed to the board to do a full-scale audit on IFFIM. And true enough, after going through the audit, there were some areas of enhancement, I should say, that we need to do. And of course, part of it is a lot to do with governance, things like procurement process, lack of SOPs and all that. And then we said, okay, what's wrong here? What's the issue here? Because if you look at the governance level, at the board level, IFFIM was the board members are senior Islamic bankers. These are the CEO themselves that sits on the board that really know about governance, really know about ethical, really know about all this, the whole 9 yards about compliance framework. And when we drill further, we realized that, of course, at the senior management, at the CEO level, he's aware of it, and he translated it to the senior management. But somewhere we realized that he lost into the verticals of each business unit, right? And we realized that, what was it? Then we realized, oh, there could be one thing, lack of clear communication, right? And the moment the message is conveyed, it was not really conveyed directly all the way to the top. So somewhere other people were just working in their own bubble. And so Justin was saying that, look, I would just focus on doing whatever that we need to do. And I would just don't really have to, I don't really have any care of what's going on at the other side of the verticals, and so to speak. And we only realized it after, first of all, we just conveying this idea. We realized that it's not being translated all the way to the working level. And we changed the whole thing. We said, look, we need to actually develop this culture. And what we did was basically starting to communicate on them on a more regular basis. It can be through messaging, through town hall, through whatever means that necessary to make sure that the message in terms of the importance of culture of compliance, the culture of integrity, is actually be embedded into IFFIM. So it's a culture building. And sometimes what happened to them is that because of this lack of awareness, they will just think that what they are doing is perfectly okay, right? When this is not, right? It's actually, to them, is, yeah, it looks acceptable, hence I should be okay. A simple thing like, for example, when you get an approval, verbal approval from the senior management, I can just execute it without doing a memo, right? For example, right? And because of that, it makes the whole process very vague. So we had to actually do this, and the process of actually engaging them actually is an ongoing process. I like what Mark was saying, setting the tone from the top to be able to see that how things are done, right? And at the same time, to make sure that people are able to implement it, to make sure that the things are conveyed in a language that they can easy to understand. And the most important thing is that to set examples so that they can emulate. So these are the kind of things that we actually focus at IFIM in terms of actually putting in the right mindset so that the organization can go on without having all these issues. And we told them, look, at the heart of it is, of course, integrity, right? You need to have integrity, as Justin was saying, things that you do when people don't see you, right? So that's the most important thing. But the way we look at that, yep, what you believe might not be sufficient, right? You need to actually have certain level of awareness. Say, for example, you have ethical standards that you need to follow. That will actually define the integrity. And because of that, if you actually follow it strictly, then the culture of compliance will come in. And of course, indirectly or directly, we'll actually make sure that risks are being mitigated or managed. So for an organization like IFIM, it's quite important for us to have a very strong governance structure, because like it or not, IFIM is one of the organizations that actually is the proxy of the Islamic finance industry. So if we do certain thing which is not in line with, say, the good practices out there, right? People may have the view that it represents the industry. So for IFIM, the integrity, ethical practices, risk management is utmost important, because it's not just about the organization; it's actually representing the whole industry as a whole, the industry as a whole. So that is always our constant challenge, and the way we look at it is that what we need to do is for us at IFIM is keep on emphasizing what is important. Keep on communicating. We will, for example, in IFIM, we will try at one time, we will do a town hall session every day, right? To make sure that the importance of what the culture that we're trying to develop. But as we go on, as people are used to it, and we can see that the practices are actually getting better, of course, we will start having gaps between the interval between the town hall, not to actually, because everyday town hall is actually quite taxing on the staff. But at that point of time, it was necessary. But now we can, because we already have a certain base level of understanding, we can just have, say, for example, every week, 2 town hall sessions. And of course, we have our WhatsApp groups to make sure that certain things are being shared, certain articles are being shared. We also have subject matter experts or even personalities, key personalities that they can relate to actually talk to them, so make sure that they know what they're talking about. Because if you look at finance from my point of view, right, I have the benefit of serving Securities Commission and Malaysia. All right, when they talk about regulatory structure, we are quite fortunate because we have 2 good regulators that actually put almost everything in place, right? They will have all sets of regulations, right? From even if you want to sneeze, right? Sometimes they will have regulation for that. Yep, just a joke there. Right? So the point is basically is a very highly regulated, but of course at the same time, because being a proactive and very agile regulator, they're also quite mindful in terms of the business aspect of it. So they will have a mechanism to make sure that you can operate. So in terms of regulation, Malaysia, I think we are very fortunate is there. But the challenge is always trying to actually translate all this good regulation into practices, right? This is where sometimes the challenge is. And the way I look at it is that sometimes I'm also partly to be blamed. Sometimes when we were actually doing regulation, we tend to actually use very verbose languages, right? Sometimes it's very, very difficult to understand, right? And perhaps what we need to do is that going forward, we should actually try to make some of these things more accessible, easier to understand, so that, yep, it can be, people can really easily understand this whatever points that are regulatory or what we want, and to translate it to practice. Because and the moment we are able to practice it, then you can see a better environment created out there. As Justin was saying, like, it's about the business of trust, right? This is a trust business, and we have to actually maintain our trust. And like it or not, those actually industry, especially for example intermediaries like all of us, right, play that role in terms of ensuring that the trust of the business is always being maintained at all time, right? And how do we do that then? That's where I think we need to come in terms of coming up with all the rights, ethics, right, integrity, because at the end of the day, the moment people will lose trust, then there's no point having the business, right? And especially for Islamic finance, right? we can't afford to lose that trust. We can't afford to have our reputational perspective being actually questioned. That's the way. I remember about more than 20 years ago, right? One evening was actually we were an intermediary came, right, and putting on the table problems that the intermediary was facing. This was basically supposed to be a new management coming into the organization. Again, they did a full review of the processes, and they found a lot of discrepancy. I remember 2 bundles of documents being presented in front of us, and at that point of time, this intermediary was actually focusing on providing Islamic financial services, right? Of course, yeah, we have to deal with it. But I always remember this thing when one of these, my colleague then was saying that, look, I thought these people are doing Islamic finance services. How come they do this, right? So, so there's a higher level of expectation in terms of when you put Islamic finance industry, the moral obligation is expected to be higher, right? So for organizations like IFIM, we have no choice to really inculcate this because, like it or not, if you don't do it right, people will perceive that that's what Islamic finance is all about. Okay, SK, I shall stop there and I'll leave it back to you, right?
Thank you so much, YY. And first and foremost, congratulations for being given the ardent task of taking IFIM to a higher level, to make it as a sustainable institution with good governance structure. And as you know, Islamic banking and finance is a blue ocean. And I hope that Malaysia can take the lead to become a leader in Islamic banking and finance for Asia and beyond. And I wish you and your team the very best as you progress towards the peak.
Thank you, SK. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I would like to thank our speakers for their input for the last 40 minutes. And without further ado, let me go on to the questions that I may direct to the speakers. If any of the speakers feel that he can give more input to the questions, you are most welcome. Now, my first question will be, the challenges of effective integrity and compliance may take a back step when professional intermediaries are struggling with distribution of products, especially when they are forced to be homebound. When you say homebound, it's today, that's the MCO been done, and intermediaries can't go about canvassing for business. So how do you respond to this scenario, very especially with COVID-19 practically endangering many businesses and institutions? I may ask Mr. Mark to say a few words on this question. Mark?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, SK. I mean, I really think it's incumbent on all advisors in this case to show that, you know, remote advice, remote selling can work without compromising, right, compliance and ethics and integrity. I mean, it may be a temptation because the consequences are serious in terms of maintaining a living, surviving, but you know, any shortcuts, you know, that are rationalized because of the current situation, you know, just won't pay off, right, in the long run, and obviously may result in less than desirable outcomes for the consumer.
Justin, you would like to add, because you know, it's a very tight environment for financial planners, advisors, insurance intermediaries, and everything. With their movement being curtailed, and then of course the ongoing expenses are there for everyone in their families. So what would be advised to all this personnel, Justin?
Yep. So I think I mean I think first and foremost we recognize that it's a tough time for all. All right, especially for people who need to do a bit more client fronting role, right? Even for myself, I'm a consultant full time, right? I think COVID-19 has taught me, you know, attending board meeting in my client place. I can't even visit my clients, right? And so I think the challenges is there, right? The challenges is there for us to deliver personalized services or advice, right? And to, in a way, strengthen the relationship from there. But one thing that I just want to touch on in terms of the bright spot, right? The silver lining that I could see here is that if you look at the insurance, I mean, I signed up a couple of insurance plan during COVID-19 time as well. So one thing that I could see is that during that time, or during now, the insurance company has accelerated a lot, right? I think one famous social media quote that's going around is that who is really driving digital transformation in organizations? It's not CEO, it's not CTO, it's not CDO, it's actually COVID-19, right?
Yeah.
Right. So COVID-19 is a main force of it, right? So think about it as the whole experience of me getting into certain financial product, investment product during COVID-19 time is a lot more seamless. I can see that even for a lot of insurance company has speed up a lot in the past. What they think that wouldn't be possible is all digital, right? So you look at your prospectus digitally, you sign everything digitally, everything has made digitally, right? So I think with that process, with a speed up of the digital transformations, it helps us in two things, right? It helps industry in two things. One is really delivering better customer experience. I think that's one. And allowing the intermediaries to continue servicing the customer. The second one is really about tying back the topic of today around ethics, right? So I think the earlier point, I think one of our research is that the more manual the process is, it opens up more room for people to manipulate, right? So if everything is going to be more digitalized, I'm hoping that, you know, the whole misconduct cases will come down tremendously over the time, right? So those are my two cents.
Thank you. As the phrase goes, in the adversity lies an opportunity, and I think COVID, very especially for the financial services industry, has made a tremendous change in the mindset of all practitioners. For example, most of the companies have brought about the mobile point of sales, whereby you could interact with your customers digitally, and also more and more people are moving into virtual. Virtual is meetings have not been so successful. Today, what we are doing is virtual, whereby I think we have got an attendance of 600 people listening to us live, and there's no problem of traffic congestions, no problem of parking problems, no problems of having to dress up really fully. All right, as long as your top is appetizing, the show is over. So it has brought about a change, but brought about challenges. But my key question will be, sometimes integrity is compromised during tough times like this. What would be advices for all those practitioners? Because for them, end of the day, it's closing the sale or closing the discussion and going. So integrity can become a little bit of why not? I loosened my belt on terms of integrity. So what would be the panel's advice to all those who are live with us?
SK, I would say don't do it. Because, you know, any savings in, say, time or you know, process, right, in the beginning can come back and haunt you in the end, right?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, on the one hand, you can understand, you know, the pressures that that individuals have, advisors have. We're still adjusting to, you know, a new way of doing business, but to sacrifice integrity is really cutting off your nose to spite your face, right?
Yeah, certainly. Anybody? Why? Any input on that?
Okay, I can just share our experience in going through COVID-19. When the MCO was announced in 18 March, technically overnight our business model went obsolete, right? Overnight, the whole thing falls because we are relying on face-to-face to conduct businesses, right? And for about 2 months, we were actually struggling to actually, well, make a sense of the situation, right? But somehow or other, what we managed to do is that we responded to the industry's demand. In this case, it relates to our Takaful basic examinations, right? And we have 22 locations, exam centers. So what we did was that we actually developed our 23rd exam centers, and this was actually on cloud. Wow. Right? We actually our 23rd exam center was on cloud, and we allowed them to actually have access to remotely, right? So, and that became what we call our Takaful remote examination programs, right? We call it TREX. And it started with, I remember, I always remember this date, 27th of April. It started with on 27th of April. And at that time, we have capacity in the morning were about 30. In the evening, we have about 30. So total per day, 60. And we started with 3 candidates. And from April up to until we hand over the whole process, the system to MTA, Malaysian Takaful Association, at the end of September, total candidates that went through our TREX system was more than 20,000, right? So, that helps in terms of our revenue, right? But it also helped us in terms of boosting our confidence to actually adopt a full-fledged virtual strategy, right? So we did that, and at the same time, when we were doing TREX, we were also doing our webinars. We just said, look, we already in the doldrum anyway, so let's do it. And we keep on doing these free webinars, and later we realized by doing these webinars over and over again, we're beginning to develop new skill sets for the team, right? Yeah. So we start building a mindset around working in a virtual space, right? So from free webinars, and we move from not charging anything to charging 800 ringgit per session, right? Within the span of 6 months, and we say that, look, that's a new business model. And what happened was that we realized that because of COVID-19, I was saying that, look, COVID-19 actually pushed us. We've been trying to do virtual online program for many years, but because of COVID-19, it accelerated the whole thing, right? And because of COVID-19, we feel that, look, if we can actually develop this capacity, the virtual capacity, technically, eFIM will be crisis-proof, so to speak, right? So even if there's another COVID-20 or COVID-21, right, for as long as there's a internet connection, right, we should be able to run our business. And it also gives us another impetus. Is basically like that. We can start going cross-border, right? In fact, we've been trying our system that we've tried people all the way from London taking our programs, right? Wow. And it developed another sense of confidence in terms of really embracing this change. And for eFIM going forward, we are no longer deem ourselves as a face-to-face training provider. We are actually deeming ourselves as a hybrid training provider. So we can actually switch. If the client wants face-to-face, no problem, we can do it. If the client wants mix of both, can. If the client wants to convert it to full virtual, also no problem, right? So in fact, that happened when the third wave of COVID-19, right? When the government actually imposed the second conditional MCO, right? That's what we did. Our client just said, okay, can you convert it into everything on virtual? We can do that. And this is one thing that we want to share. We also realize that our revenue, right, this year, at least for this year, right, I wouldn't know how next year is going to be, right? Our revenue that we actually managed to harness from digital space this year is higher than face-to-face, right? So and we feel like that's it. But of course, when we do that, we cannot cut corners. The customer must still have the value proposition, the value for money, and we also build a price strategies that if you have to convert our program into virtual, what will be the benefit that we can bring to the clients and all that. But of course, it brings another element of control. Of course, why? We are in the virtual space, right? So we have to actually take into consideration the cyber risks and all that, right? So we have to make sure that the system, the integrity of system is protected, and even we even looking at making sure there's a takaful coverage on some of these things, so that anything were to happen, if the system is compromised, we hope not. There are some measures, some mechanism to protect our clients. Right. So that's a little of what we experienced during COVID-19. SK.
Good. There's been a growth, and I think Mark would agree with me. In the last quarter, all insurance companies together has made about 45% growth, Mark, if I'm myself right.
Well, I think there was there was definitely a strong rebound in Q3, right? Q2 was the worst of it, right? Because of the MCO. And Q3, we saw 44% growth over Q2. And even a slight growth over Q3 2019. So I think that was a good sign.
Good. So it shows that Malaysians are tough enough to face tough times. Right. Okay. This question I would like to ask Justin for quickly. Fiscal prudence is perhaps the biggest lesson the pandemic has taught us. With higher household debt to be expected this year, how would you advise individuals on ethics and compliance steps that they must undertake in their dealings with financial intermediaries?
I think very importantly, I think three perspective, right? In trying to solve in a way the industry systemic issue, we talk about trust a lot. I think trust is potentially one of the most often mentioned word in this forum, right? My perspective is that three stakeholders must come into play, right? I'll talk about consumer, which is directly your questions in the last bit, right? I think first it's about regulators, right? I think over the past, I think we have seen the regulator in Europe and US, I think for the past 2 years, because of royal inquiries in Australia, right? The regulators in Australia have stepped up a lot more. So I think, while most of our regulations and guidelines are principle based, I would like to urge some of the regulators to step up a bit more, looking at some of their regional peers, right? What have they been doing? I think a lot of good practices that we can replicate from some of these matured countries to Malaysia, right? So the second one is really about the service provider, right? The industry that we are talking about. I think during the presentation by the fourth speaker, we shared a lot, right? How an organization should manage conduct risks and advocating ethics to their employees. So I'm not going to repeat that, right? I think the third body in a whole ecosystem is consumer, right? So maybe I think the first urge is really don't rely. I think ask the right questions. I think that's one. I think a lot of website has taught how to be a smart consumer, right? The second thing is really know your right, right? Knowing your right as a consumer, what should you be demanding for, right? So I think that the whole things like consumer is really about to get smarter over the time in really knowing what are you buying, right? What's the product that you actually bought, right? When I was a student, I just want to share a story that I worked as a part-time summer break in the state, right? In McDonald's, selling hamburger, right? And really to my surprise, I think this is about 15 years ago or something, right? Every consumer that come in the state, they know exactly in terms of product specification, like a Big Mac. What's going to a Big Mac, right? You have three layers of bread, two patties, right? The lettuce, the tomato, the Big Mac sauce, they know exactly what's went into that, right? And if you kind of ask around to McDonald's lover in a group, right, you kind of realize that maybe half of them doesn't really know the specification well, right? Even for the food that we are taking, right? So I think I'm using a simple example to illustrate how customer in a foreign country know the product a lot more than us, right? And we tend to buy a product because we want to buy a product. We tend to eat the food because we need to eat the food, right? So maybe start to get into the awareness, knowing what are you consuming, right? In terms of F&B, the food that you actually put in your mouth, the drink that you're actually consuming, to all the way to the financial product, investment product that you're actually buying, right? So because by you being blindfolded, it actually cause a lot of harm to you personally, right?
All right. Thank you, Justin. All right. The next question I would like to ask. I'd like to ask Encik Nur Razam. Is there an effective process in place that allows employees as well as any business partners to raise ethics and compliance issues in good faith without fear of retaliation? Is there an anonymous reporting channel?
Yeah, okay, Sami. Mr. Sam. So IRB, we have a structured and transparent whistleblowing policy. So just like I mentioned in my speech, so we have a reliable platform to address any complaint. So particularly on the wrongdoing of our officers or our stakeholders or our top management. So either by sending an email to our, or write a letter to our chief integrity officers, or direct to integrity division, because I'm from the integrity division. So we are dealing with it, all this complaint, all the message from the whistleblower. So under the whistleblower policy, so of course, the identity and personal information categorized as confidential. So we have to keep very safe to our whistleblower until we done our full investigation procedure. So we have our own team to investigate for any complaints received by Integrity Division. And also we have our own standard operating procedure in investigation, because we learn from the MACC, we learn from the other enforcement agency how to investigate, how to make to get information from the intelligence. So IRB also have our own intelligence unit departments to gather all the information, to gather all the data from the third parties. So this data, this information really assists us on how we build up our profiling for any subjects or any suspect that we investigate. So we also publish our whistleblowing policy in our website. So let the public taxpayer know how to lodge a report to context, how to lodge a report to Integrity Division. So already there in the website. So we are transparent. So we are nothing to hide. Okay. So any comments or any complaints can be made directly to us. So should be no problem and safe. Thank you.
Okay, the following question is also addressed to you. Does the reporting and monitoring process keep the board of directors informed of key ethics and compliance issues and the actions that are taken to address them? Are ethics and compliance issues a regular item on the board agenda?
Oh, yeah. Okay, definitely our board directors are keen to know, okay, the progress and outcome of any issues pertaining ethics and compliance, okay? So in fact, we have a special committee named as a board audit committee to present on the progress in the meeting for every quarterly, okay? So this meeting headed by one of the board of directors from IRB, and I would say that they are really interested and aware of any issue being raised. So we have to keep them informed and update for any progress for respective issues, okay? In addition, we also have the anti-corruption committee. It's not, I just mentioned in my speech, audit anti-corruption committee in IRB and the level of states and headquarters. So all the issues pertaining the term of reference, we have to compile and also have to report to the anti-corruption committee in the Ministry of Finance. Okay, so we have a structured anti-corruption special committee to address the issue and then to bring up to the high level, which is at the ministry level. That's all.
I may address this to Mark. Mark, how is it about in the life insurance industry? Do the board always have the members of Liam during the board meeting? Do they talk about ethics and compliance?
Well, certainly the members at their own board meetings. I mean, that I think is an expectation of the regulator, right? Bank Negara. Yeah, I mean, and you know, the responsibility and expectations have increased tremendously, right, on directors over the last few years, right? So directors are very much in tune and are very sensitive and very really demanding, you know, to understand the issues that are arising, right, and what management is doing about it.
Thank you. How about IBFM, Yusri? In your area? Your mic is muted.
SK, can you repeat again the last point you were saying just now?
No, normally among the I asked Mark, what is these compliance issues and ethics issues are generally discussed in the board meeting themselves, because it's a serious matters are being discussed. And Mark said, of course.
Yeah, on our part, yes, it's actually because we have on our board I have 3 CEO of a bank, Islamic bank, and 2 CEO of Takaful operators, and these are regular conversation. And not only that, is they are having conversation. Sometimes they will ask that is to be minuted, and they will actually do a follow-up. And we are expected to every board meeting, if there is a matter arising, they will ask. And they are also quite involved in terms of the audit risk and management committee, right? And they sometimes they even propose us to actually take some mitigation steps to make sure that the compliance framework are continuously being beefed up. So yep, they are very committed in that one.
Thank you, thank you.
SK, maybe I just supplement, right? I mean, at the for insurers at the board meetings, I mean, it's obviously a requirement they have compliance committees, risk reports, right? But also there is you know, more and more we have multinationals doing business, right, in Malaysia, and one of the values of these committees is actually the sharing of incidents that happen in other similar entities outside of Malaysia for the learnings, right, of the entities in Malaysia. And so, I mean, it is a very prominent feature, right, of board meetings and the board's role.
Thank you so much, Mark. I think we have come to the end of the questions that I have for you. And Hakim, can we open the floor for our participants to ask our panel any questions that they may deem fit for the occasion?
Mr. SK Sami, I believe we have 2 minutes left.
Oh, okay. One question.
Okay. Do you want?
You can ask the question.
Can I?
Yeah. Go ahead, Hakim.
Okay. Another aspect of ethics we need to address is from marketing angle. Marketing strategies is generally will usually promise everything under the sun ethically. Ethically, a lot are not delivered as promised. Example, promise on telco coverage. So how's your view on that?
Panel, anybody would like to answer the question? Do you want the question to be repeated?
I think the question is about over-promising, right?
Yes, yes.
Over-promising and under-delivering.
Yeah, I mean, this is this often is a result of not having a confident and articulate a product solution that matches well with what a customer needs, right? And so they may an individual advisor may resort to just highlighting, maybe even exaggerating sometimes, right, the benefits of the solution they're proposing. So I'm not sure what answer the question is looking for, but I mean, it's obviously it's something that needs to be avoided. It obviously is something that creates issues. I mean, both when I was running in insurers and in Liam, we see complaints, from time to time about customers not understanding, right, what they bought. Yeah, I mean, it just there's a oftentimes, or maybe not often, but
yeah,
sometimes a situation where an advisor doesn't want to bring out issues or aspects of the product that will be seen to be negative, right? That will seem to sort of like hurt the sale. And that is, if that's done, it's a very, there may be short-term gain, but long-term pain.
Yeah. Anyone would like to give their input of under-promising and over-promising and under-delivery?
SK, just a bit from, just want to actually follow from what Mark was saying. Sometimes we realize that from our observation, sometimes the challenge is that the inability for the intermediaries or the agents to be able to explain their product very well, right? And when they are not able to really understand what the product is all about, that's when they are not able to estimate that close, right? To close the deal, right? And then that's when they start to overpromise. As simple as asking them what's inside the prospectus. Sometimes we have difficulty actually even explaining what's inside there, right? So it's about enhancing their knowledge and continue to actually learn and continuously learning to be able to actually convince that client. That's our view. That's my view.
I think if I could add back to my earlier point around the whole ecosystem, right? There's a role that regulators should play. There's a role that the service provider to play and consumer, right? I think regulator has done a good job when it comes to product disclosure. But for those of you that buy product, the product disclosure sheet is so wordy, right? Like really clicking on terms and conditions when you install an app, right? How many of us really read, right? So I think maybe it's a creative way or graphical way to illustrate that maybe. And when it comes to service provider, it's really the control that they need to put in place when it comes to sales and marketing activity in the whole product design and educating the agents, right? The third one is coming back to consumer, really knowing the product that you are buying, right? I think if these three party in the whole ecosystem can come into play a bit more effectively, we are hoping that phenomena like over-promising, under-delivery would be able to cut down. It's really not a single party effort, right? Service provider can do so much, consumer can do so much, regulator can do so much, right? I see it as a collective effort by these three important bodies and whole ecosystem work together to deal with the issue.
Thank you. Thank you. Hakim, is this okay? We are going to close now?
Yes, it's okay right now.
All right. Okay. I would like to thank our esteemed speakers, panelists, Mark Odell, Noor Azam, Mohammed, Justin Ong, Yusri Yusof, for taking your valuable time to be here with us, together with MFPC and all the participants of this forum, to make this Professional Ethics Forum 2020 a great success. Thank you so much for being with us, sir. And thank you all participants. Thank you, Hakim.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Pleasure.
SK. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, SK.
Thank you, MFPC. Thank you. Stay safe. Take care.
Thanks. Have a fruitful conference.